All right, welcome to the last video for Module 5, where we're going to briefly go through the process of fermentation. So up until now, we've talked about aerobic respiration, where it's a process in which we break down glucose, our cells break down glucose, and use that glucose molecule to generate ATP molecules. And oxygen is needed in this process to be the electron acceptor in the last part of the electron transport chain, or that oxidative phosphorylation step. However, there are some instances where no oxygen is present, and our cells can make some ATP when no oxygen is present, so under this anaerobic process. And in this process, though, the NADH molecules have to be reoxidized to NAD plus to be reused for glycolysis. And so the NADH the NADH that's constructed is basically broken down to be used in this fermentation process. And so the organic molecule being used as the final electron acceptor is the situation we have here. And so it's that NAD being used for that final acceptor. And so this process is known as fermentation. We see fermentation in a lot of kind of anaerobic microbes. We can see it in some prokaryotes. There are some organisms known as methanogens, which take carbon dioxide, reduce it to methane, and then oxidize the NADH molecules. Also, microbes known as sulfate reducing bacteria. They'll reduce sulfate to hydrogen sulfide and then use that hydrogen sulfide to regenerate the NAD plus to form the NADH. And that NADH is again used in that fermentation process. And so with that glycolysis, that fermentation step, you're really only generating the 2 ATP molecules. So whereas cellular respiration generates 36 to 38 molecules of ATP, the lactic acid formation only generates 2 molecules, and you end up with a buildup of lactic acid, so that lactate. And that has to be broken down. And when it builds up, that's what leads to the muscle cramps that you feel if you get a cramp while you're running or exercising or playing a sport. So basically what's happened is your cells have run out of oxygen to make cellular respiration continue, and your body's used this lactic acid fermentation to try to generate ATP, and you get a buildup of lactic acid, which causes the cramps in your muscles to happen. And now just kind of one final thing is you also can have other molecules to undergo metabolic pathways. And so, for example, other carbohydrates, some amino acids, glycerol will enter the metabolic pathway at glycolysis and kind of go through that whole entire process that we've talked about. You can have amino acids from proteins being broken down into pyruvate or acetyl-CoA, where they'll enter the prep step, that pyruvate oxidation. So things like cholesterol will be broken down into acetyl-CoA. Triglycerides can be broken down into acetyl-CoA, and acetyl-CoA will then enter that citric acid cycle. So that's where that fatty acids and amino acids enter the citric acid cycle. And then they'll go on to oxidative phosphorylation, where ATP can be made. Okay, so what we focused on in this module was discussing how the glucose can go through the process of glycolysis through to oxidative phosphorylation. But just know that a lot of the other organic molecules that we've talked about in the past can enter these metabolic pathways at different phases and different steps in that process to contribute to the formation of ATP molecules that can then be used for energy. And so that's it for our module 5. We will pick up with module 6 next week. And I hope you all have a great day, and we will see you in module 6.